Welcome to the Parent Equation podcast with me, Ayesha Murray. This podcast series is full of inspiring stories from working parents who are passionate about designing a life that works for them and their families. Working parents like you who want a purposeful, rewarding career alongside a balanced family life. So today on the Parent Equation podcast, I'm joined by Claire Carroll. Claire is an executive and career coach helping mid-career professionals, and we're going to talk today about portfolio careers. So welcome, Claire.
Thanks, Ayesha. Great to be here. Delighted to chat to you today.
No, it's great to have you. And this new season of portfolio careers, and obviously hearing your views on that from your perspective, because you, I believe, have a kind of psychology background.
That's right, yeah.
So you'll come at it as a different angle, potentially. And when I've been thinking about this portfolio career journey, I suppose, that many of us go on or want to go on, it seems to me there's the kind of the why period is, why do I actually want this for myself? The motivations behind it. Then the what is, what am I actually going to do as a portfolio career? What are the options available to me? And then the how, which is putting it into practice and creating an action plan around that. So I think given your background, and we've talked before about values, obviously people's motivations and behaviours, etc. How important, well, they are important. How important do you think values are in this portfolio career journey?
I would say critical. And I'd say the driving force behind why people decide to make big changes to their careers and have a portfolio career. So perhaps we should take a step back and define what values are. So how I see values are, they're fundamental beliefs and principles that help us guide the choices that we make. Things that we think, things that we do, things that we believe. And they're pretty deeply held convictions that we have. They are generally very stable throughout life, although they do fluctuate. And I like to think of it as dialing up in priority and dialing down, depending on what life stage that we're at and what kind of responsibilities or things that are happening in our life. So essentially, values reflect what are important to us. And to this point, when people are looking at something as fundamental as what we're doing for work, because we spend the majority of our waking hours in work often, and if we're working with other people, more hours with them than we do with our loved ones sometimes. So certainly being as fulfilled and satisfied in work as possible can have a huge halo effect on the other areas of our life. When things are going well in work, we feel good in other areas of our life. And when not so good, it can reflect back. And we all know people coming home to the household, be they flatmates, partners, siblings, parents, can be tough when someone has had a tough day at work or ongoing tough day. So some people decide they want to make a fundamental shift in career. And these days, I guess, we're living longer and we are having longer careers. And thankfully, society's attitudes towards older folks has changed and become more positive. Here in the West, there's always been respect, I feel, for older folks and wisdom, experience, the contributions that older folks make to society, which I love. And I'm really glad to see that kind of increasing here in the West in general. And it's not that surprising to see people in their 60s and their 70s and even in their 80s who have a wealth of experience and wisdom and knowledge to share, still working in some capacity, perhaps in a different way, perhaps more in a lecturing or mentoring or, speaking way, but also leading companies or setting up their own thing. And so I feel what's behind this are fundamental values. So if someone, for example, has been working in a corporate environment for 10, 15, 20 years, they might have had a lot of stimulation, a lot of challenge, a lot of change, feel that they have learned a lot. But they might come to a point where they're like, do you know what, I've kind of reached my level now. And I could stay here and do this for another 20 years. But actually there's a niggle of dissatisfaction or a huge urge to change and a feeling that I can't possibly show up online or in the office on Monday morning to do this again. I will scream. And that's when I find people can start listening or start tuning into what's not happening in my work life that I need to be happening. And often, if, as you will know as a coach, Ayesha, if we do a values exercise with someone like that, we realize that a value of theirs is not being expressed, or it's been restricted in some way, or they just don't have the ability to tap into a value of theirs that's important.
And that value, actually, I think an example I had the other day with a client was family, obviously, was really high on the list of values. And actually, I think when he talked about transitions, that transition to being a new parent changes those values. Or as you say, maybe the dialing up or dialing down changes because we have different priorities, different perspective on life, and then our values are therefore different. I know I had that incredibly when my kids were born. So if you suddenly have a new value of family and connection with family and children and etc., and you're working a 70-hour week, then you're automatically driving against that core value of yours. And you're going to feel that anxiety, and you're going to bring that anxiety home with you.
Yeah. And
then it's going to spill out into more areas of your life than you'd want. And it's not contained anymore within that work bubble. It starts to spill into different areas. And I think that's, as you say, when it becomes that niggle of dissatisfaction, is how quickly should one act on that niggle?
Yeah.
As opposed to waiting for that point where you think, I've had it up to here and I need to do something drastic.
Yeah. So I would say always listen to the niggles and try to voice them, be they niggles in your knee or your hip or your elbow or niggles in your mind about what's happening for you in work. Talking to someone about it, perhaps finding someone who's in a similar situation to you, similar stage, or someone who's further down the track than you are. And regardless of age, I think it's more about stage, work stage or family stage in that instance. And certainly I have found, which has encouraged me as well, a lot of the male clients that I have who have become parents are also talking about work-life balance and also trying to figure out how can they be there to support their kids, to have a more equal workload in the household. And they, particularly the ones who are in their 30s, some of them really seem to have quite a strong sense of responsibility and understanding that they are a parent as much as the mother is. And that does really encourage me. And that is a big shift and a big change. And they are trying to figure out how can they get more non-work hours back in their life in order to do the things that they want to do. And also, which I like as well, and I feel women can learn from men in this regard, is that they want to find time for their interests and their passions. So maybe they like swimming, maybe they like running, maybe they're interested in art. How can they carve out that precious 1 or 2 hours of adult me time in a week to do the thing for them? And certainly when I'm talking to female clients who talk a lot about work-life balance and family responsibilities, trying to carve out those couple of hours for yourself and your own interests. And again, coming back to values, that can allow a value of creativity to be expressed, or a value of learning, of self-development, of independence and autonomy, because it's important to feel like an adult woman or an adult man, not just a mum and a housekeeper and an employee or employer, Yeah,
and I think that's where the portfolio career opportunities come in, I guess, is that, again, it doesn't have to be a drastic, not change of career, because sort of portfolio implies there are multiple things happening. So we're not talking about a career change per se, we're talking about bringing other things in to complement, I guess, what you are used to, what you've done for 20 years, or whatever it is. And to your point about a value of creativity or value of independence, I suppose then, would you agree that if you could potentially reduce hours in your normal job, let's say, and introduce something else into your week that then taps into that value that you desire, even if perhaps your main role or career isn't quite ticking those boxes?
Yeah, exactly. So portfolio career to me generally implies a mix and a blend of employed roles, so the traditional normal 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are, and something freelance, and or kind of a side project or side hustle, as the Americans like to describe it. So generally people are reducing hours in the employed part to enable them to do something more freelance. And often a first place that people start is teaching something or mentoring or getting involved in conveying the information and experience that they built up to others. So it could be your hobby, you're sailing or football or art or music, and you start maybe in a local club with coaching or doing private lessons or with doing something online or getting involved in a school or some sort of local educational institution. And it can be a nice first step and a nice transition because you're already working on an area that's a passion for you and that you've got deep and extensive knowledge in. So you feel quite competent in that area, and it's a nice, easy step out. Some people can, as you say, make big changes. And I think there are two things that have kind of enabled this. One is technological advancements. So that idea of being a digital nomad, where if you have no caring responsibilities at home, you can up and leave and move to Indonesia or South Australia or the Maldives.
That sounds marvelous. Never mind about the kids.
With your laptop and do the thing that you love online. Some people, might do graphic design or might do digital marketing or communications and continue the work that they have, based at home, but just in a different location. I think the other piece that has underpinned it are societal expectations or beliefs around what's kind of good or correct or acceptable. Terrible when we are subject to other people's opinions, but it is a real force that can impact how people make their decisions. And the idea of a stable 9-to-5 job that you stay in for 50 years is no longer the only path that you can take in your career. And there's a much more, we can see more examples around us of acquaintances, friends and family or former colleagues who have either changed location or stayed, but stepped out of a regular 9-to-5 type role and stepped into something that's more fluid.
Yeah, and I think also it's finding the catalyst, isn't it, I suppose? So if you're feeling confident and grounded in your values and confident in the decisions that you make, which not all of us are, it's potentially quite a hard place to get to sometimes, then maybe we can say, I want to try this. I'm going to confidently try this. I'm going to work alongside this, and things sort of work out for you. But for others, and my guest in this season, Lee, who is a portfolio career parent, if you like, redundancy is one of the first things quite a while ago now that spurred him into action to think about, okay, I need to future-proof my career because redundancies might happen again in the future. And what does that mean for my career? So he took that catalyst to work out what he could do alongside his normal career role, if you like, and ended up being personal trainer and doing all various things. So I suppose the catalyst to that career, not diversion, what do you call it, the things changing. If you haven't got that catalyst, like redundancy, how can you start to think about what might work for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess it's back to levels of fulfillment and satisfaction in what you're currently doing in your role. And I often find when I bring the perspective to folks and I ask them, how long more will you be working? And they kind of go, wow, I've been working for 15 years and I'm going to be working for another 25 or 30.
Yeah.
And suddenly that extent of time rolling out in front of them either inspires them and go, God, this is really exciting. I can try something. And maybe I need to take a dip in income. I need to figure out that financial piece. But I'm excited about trying to build and feeling that I'll regret more the things that I don't do rather than things that I do. Or people get a shock and a fright and go, oh my God, I have a whole 30 years, 35 years ahead of me. I can't possibly stay in the thing that I'm in now and do that for longer than I've already been doing it. So there can be a kind of a positive feeling that can spur you into action and at least planning or imagining what you could do differently, or a negative feeling that ideally we don't want to dwell in too much, right? Because negative feelings motivating us to do stuff tend to impact our decision making in a not so great way. But to think, okay, turn that, I'm 30 years still to go into right, this is an opportunity, not a scary thing. And I often ask people as well, like, how many hours do you spend in work and how many hours left over do you have? And when they really realize, we're spending the majority of our waking hours in work, that's when they think, yeah, no, I deserve it. I owe it to myself to try to bring in the things that I am more interested by or that fulfill me more in work to it. And not to say that work needs to be your lifestyle. It's perfectly acceptable to do a job that keeps you moderately happy or satisfied, and spend more of the time on the things that you love outside of work. But upping the moments where you feel excuse me, energized, and that you're making a positive contribution, and that you're leading towards some sort of greater goal or greater contribution to society or thing, generally means that we are happier and more fulfilled in life overall.
And I think there's this, not a stigma necessarily, but maybe a view that if you decide to have a portfolio career, and again, I suppose portfolio career aren't words that we would normally use outside of a coaching environment, but of adding something new, varied, etc., then are we saying then you're not as ambitious, for example, or you want to reduce your working hours in your career because you're not as ambitious, and you might want to do something a bit quieter on the side? So does it feel like you can still be ambitious, you can still want to drive your career forward with a portfolio career option?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that, because I think it's a really brave thing to do. It's really brave to leave a stable work environment where you've built up a wealth of experience and knowledge and contacts, and to go out and do something very different, or even to reduce down your time in that and go out and try something different. And I think the majority of people actually look at other folks and think, wow, that's brave, perhaps a tinge of envy or jealousy. But I really think it's so brave. And I think it's people plowing their own furrow, we would say over here, making your own path in life and being very confident in what's good for you, and for those around you, to go ahead and do it. And funny, you mentioned about your guest who was spurred on by a redundancy situation. So in my own case, I set up my coaching practice following a redundancy from a tech company that I chose. I took some time off, and I remember talking to friends then saying, I think, rather than leaning in, like Sheryl Sandberg says, I think I want to lean out. I'm just going to set up my own thing. And I remember them looking at me, setting up your own business, you're labeling that as leaning out. Like, are you nuts? I was like, yeah, actually, that's true. That is being brave and taking a punt on myself and saying, right, I'm going to set goals. And in 3 months, I want this to happen. In 6 months, I want this to happen. And this is the hard line. These things are happening, or it's not working out. So I change and I think of something different. And for me personally, stability and security are massive values of mine. Yet I was stepping out of a very well paid, high flying tech role, and not looking for another one, but going and doing my own thing. Financial situation, but it allowed my values of autonomy, of work-life balance, that entrepreneurial spirit that I always wondered, would I ever be able to set free a little bit, and kind of, I guess, and challenge. I do like a good level of challenge and intellectual stimulation. So there were a whole set of skills and things that I needed to learn in setting these up, and I found that those really, really energized me. It was great. And I'd always love coaching, mentoring, managing people. That was the thing that really energized me at the end of the day. And I've had literally hundreds of career conversations with folks and teams that I've managed over the years. And I always ask them, when you shut down your laptop at the end of the day and it's been a good day, and you think to yourself, I've killed it, what's the thing that's happened? And when I finally took my own advice and sat down and did that for myself, I was like, helping other people figure out their career paths. It's what I love. I don't know if it sounds like the most exciting thing, but it is really what I love. So I said I'd go for it and try it, and thankfully it's working out so far. So, but that's, I mean, I was lucky in that I had people around me, friends and family, who were supportive. And on a pragmatic front, there's a strong kind of local enterprise office network here in Ireland where you can go to get business advice, to figure out what grants are available, to understand how to run a business. Because I would say for folks considering a portfolio career, if you want to go out and set up as a sole trader or as a company on your own, you might have a lot of skills and experience in the thing itself, be that sport, music, art, business mentoring, whatever it is. But running a business is a very different set of skills, and it does take quite a bit of time. And at the end of the day, we need to earn money to pay our bills, which are ever increasing due to the crisis, cost of living crisis. So that's an important thing to think about. So I think if someone is reviewing their values and thinking, if I'm going to have a portfolio career, what values will my portfolio career allow me express or fulfill that aren't being fulfilled right now? I think it's sensible to check those values that maybe will not be fulfilled or maybe will be contradicted.
Yeah.
So, for example, in my case or other folks' case that I know, the security and stability, like how am I plugging that gap? I love teamwork. I love collaborating. It's really what I work best. But as a solo business owner, how do I, bring in acquaintances, colleagues, I have a supervisor and so on. But how do I build some sort of team around me or networks of people to tap into so that I don't feel I'm sitting alone in my bedroom, spare bedroom, go crazy.
And interestingly, that's funny because you mentioned that, and I'd never thought about it till just now, is that my career is currently, I suppose you could say, portfolio, because coach by day, podcast host by night, for example, are two different strings on the same kind of bow, but different different paths I'm taking with them both. But actually, to your point about the values I'm meeting through that, and my connection is a huge value for me. I love being with people. I hate being on my own. I can't bear it. Bought my own company in about 3 minutes. So actually, I was suffering, as you have just said, from being a solo business owner in the spare room. Yes, connection through coaching clients, but all through screens. But actually, the podcast then has given me a real sense of connection with people and a real way to expand my network and talk to people on a very different level. So that's then ticking that value box of connection, which I used to have when I was in a busy buzzy office. So it's interesting. I don't think I'd actually thought about it that way, that even subconsciously I was taking myself down a path to find that value or to have that value met somehow.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Makes total sense.
Then just think about what you said about taking a punt on yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's such a valuable statement, especially when we come to working parents and often working mums that we talk to quite a lot, where your confidence can take quite a hit or quite a knock from a career point of view when you go back to work after having kids. And there's a lot of people saying, am I still valuable at work? Have I still got anything to offer? All these kind of the self-doubt can creep in quite easily in those first stages, certainly of motherhood and parenthood. So actually just having the confidence to actually back yourself for once, to put yourself first, which often we don't do, and say, actually, this is what I want and I believe I can do it. So I think values aside, is just having that strength of character.
Yeah.
To say that as you did, put yourself first and back yourself.
Yeah. And I think about your why. Why are you doing it? And in those moments where it's tough, step back and think, okay, what's the bigger picture? What's the 5,000 meter view? Looking and why am I doing what I'm doing? And for me, it was genuinely about helping people. And I often hesitate to say that out loud because it sounds twee or unoriginal, but it is. It's the thing that's always, that's always kind of energized me or made me feel fulfilled in work. But I can think of other people, like two women in particular, I'm thinking who really wanted to change the world. And one is someone that I went to school with, had worked in office as an office manager, went back, retrained in finance, got into stockbroking and wealth management to quite a senior leadership level, then left, took some time out and founded a company, got into medtech. She's CEO, and it's in the medical device bracket. So it's a shield that measures breastfeeding, the volume of breast milk that comes, particularly for premature or sick babies, because breast milk, the most nutritious and healthy substance that a newborn can have. But measuring the quantity for sick babies is super important. So it's patented, it's going through clinical trials. It is a truly global effort. It's an amazing company. It's gone through really great fundraising rounds and is set to go to market soon. And that's been a 6-year journey, maybe. So a huge amount of bravery, of sacrifice, of skill learning, of connecting, of flying around the world, getting involved in clinical trials with her 2 business partners. And it's so admirable. And it's so admirable to see, someone making a huge leap from something wealth management, wealth creation, through to something that is health, and for small children, and for, you know, helping families in a very vulnerable and scary situation. I can think of someone else who was kind of in sustainability in a campaign director role, then went back and did a full-time master's actually in LSE, in London School of Economics. Then did a stint at the UN doing peace building. Fascinating. Dabbled in journalism. Then lived in the States for a while and got into retail in sales, you know, in an apparel company. And now has founded her own company, which is a tech platform connecting parents with childcare options, be they nannies, au pairs, creches, whatever, in a local area, but based on values. So often we choose our childminders based on availability and cost. And we kind of forget about our really important these days, thinking through what's our parenting philosophy? How do we want to raise our kids? You know, what kind of style are we using? So she matches minders based on similar philosophies and similar values, which I think is amazing. And also, companies can kind of onboard in this platform so that they are subsidizing or fully funding the cost of childcare for parents. And it's in a bid to tackle the gender pay gap, because, you know, more women are dropping out of the work due to caring responsibilities for families. And B, like I love how Kate articulates it. Here in Ireland, the government fund has a bike to work scheme. So you can buy a bike tax-free, so it's 50% off essentially, to get yourself to work on a bicycle. It's environmentally friendly, it's good for health, it's good for the nation, it cuts down on traffic jams and so on and so forth. But the next big barrier to people getting to work in a healthy and sustainable and more stress-free way is childcare that's available, and you've got a backup plan, and even a backup plan to the backup plan. So that's the philosophy she's coming at with the platform. So I love in those two examples of happen to be women who have been working in very different areas and then just decided, you know what, I'm going to try and change the world, like literally try and change the world in an international sense with a product or a platform that's going to really make a difference. That's, I think, very genuine examples, are very big, extreme examples of portfolio careers.
Yeah, and both those examples, they've experimented, haven't they? What you're saying, they've tried various different things. It's not just sort of making one decision and then saying, this is it now, I've got to follow this path ad infinitum. It's actually just being open to exploring possibilities and changing your mind. Saying, do you know what, this one's not quite working for me, or it's not quite aligned to my values or my income needs or my flexibility needs, whatever it might be. So I'm going to try something else. And the second example you gave sounds like she's tried multiple things before then finding herself on this current path.
Yeah. No, it can be very, inspiring to hear about these stories. And I think as well, something that can hold us back in many areas is that fear of failure, or that fear of what might others think. And the fear of failure is a real and powerful force. And we can think through all the reasons that it mightn't work out or won't work out. And what might people think? They might laugh, or might think I was silly, or might think, who does she think she is? Of course, that wasn't going to work. And it does take bravery and pragmatic things like planning and assessing and creating the narrative for yourself and for other people to maybe keep them at bay, keep the naysayers at arm's length and say, I'm trying this, things are going really well. You don't need to get into the details. Not everyone is privileged to have access to the information that you have. Keep it to the smaller circle so that you're not allowing the cynics in and to influence you negatively. And I think it is sensible, be it, stepping out of a paid employee position into something you're starting up yourself, or if it's reducing hours and taking on something freelance or some sort of side project. It is sensible to have goals and to think about, how am I going to assess whether I'm doing well, and keeping the goals achievable with a little bit of stretch, because confidence comes from experience and from doing. And when you're doing and you achieve what you set out to do, you get that kick of dopamine, that kick of serotonin, that pride and that happiness and that boost of confidence, thinking, oh, I can do this. This is going okay. And of your 4 goals that you write down, 2 maybe you hit and 2 you don't, but you're halfway there. That's also positive. Nobody gets 100% the first time. And aiming for
any time. I imagine.
Right. You're setting yourself up for a fall. So I think keeping it realistic. And I think also as life unfolds, we realize now often 80% is good enough.
Yeah.
Done is better than perfect is a mantra that Facebook, now Meta, have around the place. And I love it. Done is better than perfect. And I think particularly for anyone listening or anyone who's a parent, we can certainly relate to that. You know, it doesn't matter if the house is a bit messy. I know it feels like it matters. Maybe we like that sense of control. It doesn't actually matter, you know.
And what about when you put alongside that? So that's your own control, if you like, is your goals, you're trying to not to be a perfectionist, all those kind of things. But I found the biggest struggle for me, and still is 4 years into having this business, is comparing myself to others. So trying something new, you've got the naysayers, obviously, which you can't, as you say, try and keep at bay.
Yeah.
But then you've also got your own tendency, especially in this social media, Instagram world we live in, to compare yourself against someone else who's doing something similar. So as soon as you mentioned those two examples of these women changing the world, my initial reaction was, oh my gosh, I'm not changing the world. So straight away, there's a feeling of, you know, why aren't I doing as well as they are? Why aren't I achieving more than they are? Why aren't I changing things more fundamentally for this world we live in than just my little bit? And that's, I think, just natural, I think, human nature to do that. But how do we manage that so it doesn't get in our way?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and I don't think there is a magic solution that can work overnight. I think it's probably a more midterm thing for us to work on our thoughts and our beliefs. What's the phrase? It's comparison is the thief of joy. Is that correct? Yeah, social media is the worst thing and the best thing in the world. I know that I can certainly get in a trap of doom scrolling, I think it's called. And I can't stop. And I know it's a neurological, physiological thing, whatever the neurotransmitters flooding around my body are, I'm getting that dopamine by, and it's terrible. And I need to leave my phone outside of my bedroom or knock it on at all, delete the apps, even for a week.
Yeah.
Because it is that comparison. So what I do know and what I coach and what I try to take my own advice on is we are always comparing our behind the scenes reels. Every thought, every doubt, every possibility, every imagined future that we've thought through, everything that we could or should do, we're comparing all of that to a sizzle reel of someone else, the highlights, and the very nicely edited social media highlights. And you just don't have access to the doubts and the mistakes and the failures. Although these days there certainly is more of a tendency for people to admit mistakes and failures and to kind of go, hey, it's okay, you know, and this is how I learned. But they're still glossy and nicely presented and nicely edited. And yes, everything worked out amazing in the end. Like, things don't always work out after mistakes and failures, but we don't hear it. So we start to think that the only outcomes are positive for other people. So why isn't it happening to me? I think we need to bear in mind we don't have a full data set. We only have a part of the light. We're looking through a keyhole and only seeing a small part of the picture, not the full thing. So I think that's first. And also, so when I used to work in Google, I did for 10 years, a company full of very bright people, a lot of side projects and things, you know, Olympic medals here and businesses there and whatever, like crazy amounts of overachievement. And I suffered a lot from impostor syndrome when I joined, and gosh, what do I have to offer? But I was like, no, I was hired. I was hired for a reason. The reason was I was ex-ad agency. I was in the Google Ads part. We were trying to encourage clients to invest more of their digital marketing budget into Google search and YouTube. And I had planned and bought TV space and radio space and press space for years. So I had access to who was making the decisions, how were decisions actually made and when. So that was the reason I was hired, not because I knew a lot about search market and search advertising. I absolutely didn't. Or YouTube advertising, because I didn't. So I just kept pulling my mind back to there is a reason and leverage that. You know something that others don't. So kind of, I guess at the time, like for the beginning, I decided to kind of stay in my lane. I was like, this is the one thing that I'm going to be known for. I'm the person who knows how media agencies operate, and I'm always going to bring that. And I'm just going to try and not get sucked into, oh my God, everyone else knows so much more about search than I do, and pick it up. And I think the word yet can be useful, very useful. I don't know that yet. I don't understand how it works yet. And it's, again, a matter of time.
And belief and that yet, I suppose, comes from a sense of confidence that you will get there.
Yeah.
And it's fine to take the time at your own pace or whatever the, again, scenario is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can remember a specific incident about maybe 3 years in or so, sorry, just a situation where my boss, who was wonderful and fabulous, also new to the company, and sat down and asked, oh, I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me? And I was mind blown that someone so senior and with all the experience, not that she didn't know it, but that she was so unapologetically and normally saying, oh, I don't know this. Can you teach it to me? So the person did teach it to her, and then she knew it for the next time. And I just, that is so inspiring to see someone so humble, just learning the thing that they didn't know and modeling to a whole team. She had quite a big team, I think 50 people, that when you don't know something, just say it, learn it, move on to the next thing. And I don't even actually realize in the moment, but sometimes we can feel a need to maybe hide our gaps or the things that we don't know, rather than focus on the things that we do know and pull in resources, pull in other people, ask Google, ask ChatGPT, ask another human what it is, or collaborate with someone, you know. And often people are very flattered when we ask them about their expertise and their knowledge or for help, you know. Often people do want to help. Yeah,
and it gives that a two-way value, doesn't it? It gives back to that value of connection.
Yeah,
there's genuine connection when you're asking for help or giving someone help.
Yeah,
it just sort of breaks down some of those walls, I think, and allows people to be more vulnerable and therefore hopefully more honest and open to connection.
Yeah. So the shoulds are comparing to other people. The thing is, there's always someone looking at you and thinking, wow, they're amazing. I wish I could do what they do. You seem to have such a diverse business, and you know, they've got a great work-life balance, and they really seem to be passionate about what they're doing. And for someone like you're doing it in the public eye, you know, there's vulnerability there. So for me, I think it was thinking through the worst case scenario. If this business doesn't work, what then?
Yeah.
And part of me was like, well, those naysayers who are thinking, who does she think she is setting it up? And who knows who they are? They're presumably imaginary people in my head. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to craft a 3-sentence narrative to say, I tried it. You know, I didn't really, I actually didn't like it. I thought that I'd love it, but this is the bit that I didn't like. So now I'm doing this. And I love this because of X, Y, and Z. And move the conversation on. You know, just create a story that's short, generic, honest, and move on. Nobody's thinking about me longer than 3 seconds. Everyone's thinking about themselves.
What are we? We're all the what's the fish and chips terminology? That today's newspaper is tomorrow's fish and chips wrapper. Wrapper, whatever. And that's what we are, aren't we? You know, we think that we're sort of the focus of everyone else's attention. We're not really. We just need to, as you say, stay in our lane, explore, be curious, stay true to our values, do what's right for us at this moment in time and our families, etc. And then just, if it doesn't work out or needs to change, then go with the flow a bit more, I suppose, within reason.
Well, I feel, as you talk there and I hear my words back at me, I feel I'm contradicting myself a little bit. So I'm talking about staying in your lane, and I'm talking about portfolio careers. So for me, the staying in my lane bit was when I moved to something new, and I was like, the expertise and the knowledge and the skills that I'm bringing to this, that's the bit that I'm staying in. And I'm not going to get sucked into thinking I need to be like everyone else here. And then when I decided to change, I was like, okay, it was back to the more fundamental things around what motivates me, what gets me out of bed in the morning, what are the values that I want, how do I want to live my life? And a big thing for me post-COVID, like a lot of people, was, the commute, cutting out on the commute, because I had no time for interests, hobbies, kids, and that bit of autonomy. Working in a big corporate is getting so big, you don't have the opportunity to do things your way as much. So there are times, I think when the self-doubt or the comparing to others creeps in, it's like, hunker down and really understand your own strengths and skills and why you're doing it for you. Your values are different to other people. So it doesn't matter what other people are off doing because they've got different values. And that's the beauty of the human race, all the diversity and variety that we have.
Thank you so much, Claire. how can people get hold of you? So if they're a mid-career professional, I know this conversation has resonated, which I'm sure it will do. Where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, sure. I have a website. It's clairecarroll-coaching.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's Claire A. Carroll. And I think I'm connected to you on LinkedIn, so people can find your page.
And I'll put all your details in the notes as well anyway, so people can find you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. So yeah, so I do, an initial chat to figure out what the challenge or decision or situation is ahead of you. And then if we feel chemistry is good, and I feel that I can help you, we can crack on to figuring out the details.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then tons in this conversation for those people who are at that stage, I'm sure, of thinking where their careers might take them. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and your time today.
Thanks, Ayesha. It was a real pleasure. The time flew.
It did. Thank you, Claire.
Take care.
To work with me, find out more at ayeshamurray.com, connect with me on LinkedIn, or check out my free resources and quizzes at ayeshamurray.com/resources.